everyone, today I wanted to show you how I made my super cool color changing Minnie ears. These ears change from pink in the shade to blue in the sun, so of course I based them off of Sleeping Beauty. The first thing I did was to boil up some water and then pour that water into a disposable cup. I brought that cup out to my garage just so I wouldn't make too much of a mess with the dye. This is the color changing dye I'm using. It has been used before, so it is no longer concentrated. Because of this, I chose to warm up the dye from the outside by sticking the bottle into the boiling water. This did cause the sticker and the bottle to melt a little bit, so I vented the bottle by opening up the lid. I then poured the dye into the same disposable cup after disposing of the water. I don't always wear gloves while dyeing, but I did choose to do so this time, and I grabbed my white cotton fabric. It's important that it's cotton because this dye was not made to be used on synthetic material. I did a little dip into the cup and the dye was already looking amazing. I then proceeded to put as much fabric into the cup as possible and wring out the excess dye. Bubble, bubble, bubble. I was pleasantly surprised to see how much fabric I was able to dye with 2 ounces of liquid. This dye is like liquid gold, so I made sure to wipe out the inside of the cup with some of the fabric to make sure no drop was left behind. This actually worked really well because I ended up with this tie-dyed speckle look. In future projects, I would even like to put some of the dye into a spray bottle and then spray it onto the fabric to see what would happen. I think it would be a really neat way to apply less dye to a larger square footage of fabric while still getting a really neat color changing effect. And if you were to spray the fabric with multiple colors of color changing dye, I think it could just look absolutely amazing. Alright, now that our magical fabric is dyed, let's start in on the project. I went on the internet and I found a random Mickey ear template and I printed that off and cut it out so I could use it for my ears. Then I took a thin box from my pantry and I traced out the Mickey template onto that and onto my color changing fabric. I also traced and cut out some white fabric as well. Make sure to cut your fabric a little bit bigger than your template and this is what you should have. I then printed off these silhouettes from Sleeping Beauty. I'm going to be using these as a guide so that I can cut out my color changing vinyl nice and pretty. I taped my vinyl and my template onto this piece of cardboard so that I wouldn't accidentally cut into my table. The next step was to iron the vinyl onto my ears. I just used the manufacturing instructions and I covered up my vinyl with a piece of cloth before ironing so that I wouldn't accidentally melt it. Next, I centered my cardboard template onto my material. I glued around the edges and then I folded in that extra bit of fabric and pressed down firmly. Do this to all 4 ears and now you should have something that looks like this. I left the bottom open, creating a small pocket where I could insert stuffing into the ear. I could have skipped this step, but I think it adds some more dimension to the ear. I kept stuffing and stuffing the ear until I got to the desired puffiness, and then I glued the bottom shut. Once I had done this to all 4 ears, I was able to take one of the white sides and one of the pink sides and then glue them together with hot glue, making a little sandwich. Make sure to press down firmly and glue the edges so that everything is nice and secure. I chose to cover this up with ribbon so that the hot glue wouldn't be noticeable once the ears were worn. The next step was to make the mini bow. I cut out 2 rectangles and then I put them right sides together and I sewed on my sewing machine. Also, look at this cute little rainbow. Isn't it adorable? It makes me so happy and I wanted all of you to see it because it is a beautiful little rainbow. Okay, let's get back to the tutorial. What were we doing? Yes, the mini bow. Once I had sewn the rectangles right sides together, I trimmed all of the corners and then I flipped them inside out using this nice little turner, which is pretty much just a glorified chopstick. Once everything was turned around, I sewed up the bottom by top stitching around the entire rectangle. I didn't feel the need to waste any extra color changing material, so I just used white fabric on the back. I pinched everything together in the middle and I had a bow. Now that I had ears and a bow, it was time to start working on the headband to put everything onto. I cut up a piece of material that looked like this and it was long enough to roll my headband along like this. There we go. I then put hot glue all over the headband and I wrapped the material around it so that I got this and it looks gorgeous, but I wanted to cover up that middle bit. So I cut out a piece of felt, which was roughly the size of that middle bit. I hot glued the inside of the headband and I pressed down the felt in place like so. Then I hot glued the ears and the bow into place and it was time to start decorating. My Walmart didn't have any gem tack, so we're using fabric tack. For the pink side of the ears, I used these really pretty little blue gems and I just glued them all over the ears like this. I think it looks really cute. It's like a nice contrast, at least when it's pink and blue. When it's in the sun, it's blue and blue. For the front of the headband, I added gems to the bow, and I also added this little hidden Mickey, which isn't super hidden, but I thought it was cute. And then I added these little borders to each of the ears using more gems, which took forever ever, but I don't regret it. It looks very nice and filled in some of that extra white space. I also hot glued some color changing flowers onto the back flower side just to add a little something extra, which I think looked really nice as well. These flowers were left over from the time that I made a color changing Aurora dress. I've actually made a few color changing Aurora Sleeping Beauty dresses, but yeah, I had extra flowers, so I used them. I do have a tutorial on how I made all of those color changing dresses, but anyway, back to the ears because that's what this video is about. Technically, what you're looking at right now, the flower side is the back side, and then the bow side is the front side, but these ears are reversible, so either side can be the front side. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed, and have a great day. Bye!